Jake Vanham was the pride and hope of his family's aeronautical empire. Known for his innovative ideas and dedication, Jake's brilliance often clashed with the shadow cast by his domineering father and brash older brother Rufus Jr. Despite the familial challenges, Jake was determined to carve out a legacy of his own, separate from the constraints of his family's expectations. Jake met Brooke at a charity swim event where her bold demeanor and relentless ambition initially captivated him. Mistaking her assertiveness for charm, Jake was drawn to her, and their relationship escalated quickly. When Brooke revealed she was pregnant, Jake did what he thought was the honorable thing and married her. Life appeared picture perfect, but under the surface, tensions brewed. Brooke's lavish lifestyle and manipulative tendencies soon became evident. Meanwhile, Jake, focused on his career and children, was oblivious to the growing closeness between Brooke and Rufus Jr. This secret bond would soon unravel Jake's life. One fateful evening, during a gathering on the terrace of a luxury inn, Brooke sat with friends, wineglass in hand. The conversation turned to her ex-husband. "What are you doing down here?" inquired Brooke. She had a sense of something was amiss. "Have you spoken to Jake since the divorce?" one of the women asked. Brooke's face stiffened for a moment before she replied, "No. Ever since I served him the divorce papers alongside a restraining order, there's been no communication. He tried to contact the kids, but after I told them the truth about his actions, they've kept their distance." One of the women hesitated. "Was it a messy breakup?" Brooke's tone turned icy. "Messy? He cheated on me with his first love, Gemma Evans." A voice interrupted from behind, dripping with sarcasm. "Jake Vanham? Cheating? That doesn't sound like him." Everyone turned to see Gemma standing there, a smirk playing on her lips. Brooke's glare hardened. Well, well, if it isn't the homewrecker herself." Gemma raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Funny coming from you. Your lies tore us apart, and now you're blaming me?" Brooke narrowed her eyes. "Don't play innocent. You were with Jake 2 years ago, while I was still married to him." Gemma crossed her arms, her voice calm and sharp. 2 years ago? Interesting timeline. I was in Edinburgh, 5,000 miles away, studying linguistics. I've got the proof to back it up." Brooke's confidence faltered as Gemma continued. "Unlike you, I wasn't scheming to ruin someone's life. If it wasn't me, then who exactly was Jake cheating with?" Brooke stammered. He cheated. And I kicked him out." Gemma's smirk widened. "You mean, you made sure everyone thought he did? Even his parents probably bought into your little story." Brooke's face turned crimson. "You don't know anything about it." Gemma leaned in, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Are those kids even his?" The words hit Brooke like a thunderclap. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Gemma straightened up, her expression cold. "You've played your games long enough. It's time the truth came out, and I'm starting with Jake's parents." Brooke's eyes widened in panic. "Don't you dare!" Gemma cut her off with a laugh. "Or what? You'll lie to them again? Good luck with that." Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving Brooke to stew in her growing fear. Gemma arrived at the sprawling Vanham estate later that day. The familiar sight of ancient trees lining the driveway and the stately mansion looming ahead brought back a flood of memories. She parked and approached the door, laptop in hand. Jake's grandfather, Rufus Sr., opened the door. His weathered face broke into a faint smile. "Well, if it isn't Gemma Evans." "Good afternoon, Mr. Vanham," Gemma said politely. "Do you remember me?" "Of course. Your name came up in the mess with Jake's marriage." He studied her intently. Why are you here?" Gemma took a deep breath. "I'm here to clear something up. Jake couldn't have cheated with me because I was living in Edinburgh at the time. I have proof." Rufus Sr. paused before motioning her inside. "Call me Rufus. It's brave of you to come forward." Gemma smiled faintly. "Jake doesn't know it yet, but I'm here to set things right. And I might have plans for him." Rufus chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "Well, he's been keeping his distance from the family, but I think he'll be glad to see you." As they spoke, Jake's mother Anna appeared, her expression darkening when she saw Gemma. "You got some nerve showing up here," Anna snapped. "You ruined my son's marriage." "Anna, calm down," Rufus Sr. interjected. "She has proof that she wasn't involved in any affair." Anna's scowl deepened, but Gemma stood her ground. "I have nothing to hide. If you're willing to listen, I can show you the evidence." An hour later, after reviewing the proof, Anna's fury turned to reluctant understanding. "So, Brooke lied to all of us?" she muttered, anger flickering in her eyes. Gemma nodded. "It wasn't just about me. She manipulated everyone to push Jake out. And now, I need to find him." Rufus Sr. gave her an encouraging smile. "He's at St. Christopher's Crossing. He's doing well, but I promise to keep his location private. I trust you'll do the right thing." "I will," Gemma assured him. "Thank you, Rufus." As she left the estate, Gemma felt a renewed determination. Finding Jake wasn't just about clearing her name. It was about finally setting things right and reclaiming the connection they'd lost. That evening, Brooke sat alone, replaying the conversation with Gemma in her mind. Her perfect world was beginning to crumble. Panic gnawed at her as she realized that the truth might finally come to light, and she would have no way to stop it. So with one hand on the edge of the table, Brooke turned to gaze straight ahead. The next morning, Gemma arrived at St. Christopher's Crossing, the peaceful campus framed by woods and hills. She had taken a position at the university to ensure she could reconnect with Jake. She wasn't sure how he would react, but she was determined to see him. After meeting with her new colleague, Nadia Thompson, who also lived in the area, Gemma discovered more about Jake's current life. Nadia mentioned a local aeronautical engineer who was designing a home for himself in the woods. The description fit Jake perfectly. Later that day, Gemma mustered her courage and followed Nadia's directions to the remote plot. As she approached the modern yet understated house nestled among the trees, her heart pounded. She knocked on the door, and when it opened, there he was. Jake stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. "Gemma," he said, his tone neutral. "What are you doing here?" Gemma hesitated. "I've been looking for you, Jake. I came to clear up everything Brooke said. I wasn't involved in anything that happened." Jake crossed his arms, his expression guarded. "And the affidavit she had, the one that wrecked my life, was that fake too?" "It was," Gemma said firmly. "She forged it. I only found out when I overheard her bragging about it. I confronted her, and then I went to your family to set the record straight." Jake's guarded stance softened slightly. "Why would you do that?" "Because I care about you," Gemma said, her voice trembling. "I always have, and I'm tired of seeing you hurt by her lies." Jake exhaled, leaning against the doorframe. "It's been a rough few years, Gemma. I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore." My inner voice cracked with relief. "Then let me help you rebuild that trust," Gemma said, stepping closer. "I don't expect things to go back to how they were. I just want to be here for you." For a moment, Jake said nothing. Then he stepped aside. "Come in, let's talk." Over the next few weeks, Gemma and Jake grew closer, spending time together as friends first. Jake opened up about the betrayal he had endured, how Brooke had not only manipulated him, but had also turned his family and children against him. Gemma in turn shared her frustrations with Brooke's lies and her desire to see Jake find happiness again. One afternoon, Jake received a call from his lawyer. The results of the paternity tests for his children were in. His hands trembled as he opened the envelope, and Gemma, sensing his anxiety, stayed by his side. "They're not mine," Jake said quietly, his face pale. "Both of them. They're Rufus's." "Huh." Gemma's heart broke for him. "Jake, I'm so sorry." Jake set the papers down, his expression hardening. "She's taken everything from me. My family, my reputation, my children. But this is the last straw. I'm going to make her and Rufus pay for what they've done." Jake wasted no time. He filed a lawsuit against Brooke and Rufus for fraud and extortion, demanding reimbursement for the child support he had paid over the years. At the same time, his grandfather, Rufus Sr., began preparing a plan to ensure Jake's rightful place in the family business. Brooke, now isolated and without financial support, was beginning to realize the magnitude of her actions. She had relied on Rufus to provide for her after Jake left, but now Rufus faced legal troubles of his own. One evening, Brooke confronted Rufus Jr. about their predicament. "What are we going to do?" she demanded. "Don't worry about it," Rufus said dismissively. "I've got connections. Jake won't win." But Brooke wasn't so sure. She had seen the determination in Jake's eyes before he left, and it terrified her. Meanwhile, Jake began rebuilding his life. With Gemma's support, he refocused on his work and the new home he was building. Their relationship deepened, and Jake started to believe in love again. One evening, as they sat together on the porch of his nearly completed house, Gemma hesitated before speaking. "Jake, what if we started over? Together?" Jake looked at her, surprised but hopeful. "You mean that?" "Oh." Gemma nodded. "I'm here for the long haul." "If you'll have me." "All right." Jake smiled, pulling her into an embrace. "I'd be a fool to say no." And then, the drama was far from over, but Jake finally had a partner he could trust, and a new future to build. As the lawsuits against Brooke and Rufus unfolded, Jake and Gemma stayed united, determined to face whatever challenges came their way, together. As the lawsuit progressed, the Vanham family estate became a battlefield of legal and emotional turmoil. Brooke struggled to maintain her composure as she received the official notice demanding DNA samples from her children. Panic set in as she realized the inevitable. The truth about her deceit was unraveling. One fateful evening, Brooke sat in her kitchen, nervously twisting the corner of a napkin as her thoughts spiraled. A knock on the door startled her. When she opened it, two individuals stood there, a man in a crisp suit and a woman with a video camera. "Mrs. Brooke Vanham?" the man asked. "Yes," Brooke replied hesitantly. "You've been served," the man said, handing her an envelope before walking away. With trembling hands, Brooke opened the envelope. The papers inside confirmed her worst fears. The DNA results proved that neither Olivia nor Brian was Jake's child. Additionally, she was now being sued for the full reimbursement of child support, plus damages for fraud. Her world crumbled. Without Jake's financial support and with Rufus Jr. embroiled in his own legal troubles, she faced the bleak reality of losing everything. Meanwhile, at the Vanham estate, tensions reached a boiling point. Jake's grandfather, Rufus Sr., had summoned the entire family for an urgent meeting. The atmosphere in the conference room was electric with tension as Jake arrived, accompanied by his lawyer. Rufus Jr., his face a mask of barely contained fury, glared at Jake. "Here to scavenge what's left?" he sneered. Jake ignored him, taking a seat beside his lawyer. Rufus, seated at the head of the table, cleared his throat. "Enough, Rufus," he said sternly. "We're here to settle this once and for all." The reading of Rufus Sr.'s will shock everyone in the room. Jake was named the sole heir to the family business, bypassing both his father and Rufus Jr. entirely. The room erupted in chaos.
"This is absurd," Rufus Jr. shouted, lunging toward Jake. But before he could act, 2 security guards restrained him. "I foresaw your tantrum," Rufus Sr. said coldly. "That's why I hired these gentlemen." "No." The final blow came when Rufus Sr. revealed DNA evidence proving that Rufus Jr. wasn't even a legitimate Vanum. The news left the room in stunned silence. And on May 16th, 2020, Jake, though shaken, remained composed. "I don't want to gloat," he said, his voice steady. "I just want to rebuild what's been broken." With the legal battles behind him, Jake turned his focus to his future with Gemma. The two worked together to complete their home in the woods, transforming it into a sanctuary. It was a labor of love that symbolized their new beginning. One evening, as they admired their finished home, Gemma turned to Jake, a glint of mischief in her eyes. "So, what's next for us?" I'm trying to think. Am I gonna redesign? And Jake smiled. "Whatever you want, Gemma. This is our story now." She placed a hand on his chest. "I was thinking about adding another chapter. Maybe 1 or 2 more little additions." Jake blinked in surprise before breaking into a laugh. "Are you? Oh." Gemma nodded, her smile wide. "We're having twins." Jake's heart swelled as he pulled her into a tight embrace. "You've given me more than I ever thought I deserved." "You deserve everything, Jake," she whispered. "Ugh." As Brooke watched from a distance, her jealousy consumed her. She had lost everything: her comfortable life, her children, and the man she had underestimated. Gemma and Jake, meanwhile, stood on the cusp of a bright and promising future, ready to face the world together. Brooke's defeat was complete, and Jake's revenge wasn't just about justice. It was about reclaiming his life, finding love, and building a future free from the shadows of the past. Weeks after the dramatic will reading and the unraveling of Brooke's lies, Jake settled into his new role as head of Vanam Aeronautical Industries. The transition wasn't easy. His father and Rufus Jr. had run the company into the ground, leaving behind a trail of financial mismanagement and damaged relationships with key partners. But Jake approached the challenge with the same determination that had defined his life. With Gemma by his side, Jake slowly rebuilt the company's reputation. His vision for innovation and ethical leadership won over skeptical board members and brought a sense of stability that had been absent for years. Meanwhile, Brooke's life spiraled further into disarray. The court ordered her to repay Jake for years of fraudulent child support, a sum she could never hope to afford. To make matters worse, she was ostracized by the Vanam family, who refused to offer her any assistance. Her desperation led her to attempt one final gambit. One afternoon, Brooke arrived at Jake's home. She had spent hours preparing herself, donning a tight dress and heavy makeup in an attempt to rekindle whatever lingering affection Jake might have had for her. Jake answered the door, his expression unreadable. "Brooke?" he said flatly. "What do you want?" Jake. "I know I've made mistakes," she began, her voice trembling. "But we have a history. We have the kids. Can't we just, um, try again?" "Jake, what?" Um, Jake crossed his arms. "The kids aren't mine, Brooke. That's been made painfully clear. As for our history, it's not one I care to revisit." Brooke's tone turned desperate. "But I need you. I can't take care of them on my own. Rufus is gone and I'm all alone." Jake shook his head. At that moment, Gemma appeared behind Jake, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Brooke's eyes widened as she took in Gemma's pregnant form. "You're having his baby?" she asked incredulously. "Oh no," the woman smiled pensively. "No," she said. "Babies," Gemma corrected, her tone unyielding. "Twins, to be exact. And, unlike you, I won't use them as pawns." Brooke's composure shattered. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized just how thoroughly she had lost. "Jake, please," she begged. "I can change." Jake sighed, his voice devoid of anger but firm. "It's too late for that, Brooke. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. I've already made arrangements for the kids to have a stable home with people who actually care about them. This conversation is over." Um, Gemma stepped closer, her hand slipping into Jake's. "Goodbye, Brooke," she said softly, but decisively. As Brooke walked away, she knew this was the end of her chapter in Jake's life. She had gambled everything and lost. Now, all she could do was face the consequences of her actions alone. Back inside, Jake and Gemma sat together on the couch. Jake exhaled deeply, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in months. "It's finally over," he said quietly. The phone in Gemma's, in Philip's hand, Gemma leaned her head against his shoulder. "Now we can focus on what really matters. Us, our family, and..." Jake smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "Thank you for standing by me, Gemma. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without you." "You don't have to do anything alone anymore," Gemma replied, her voice full of warmth. "We're a team now." Jake kissed her gently, a sense of peace washing over him. For the first time in years, he felt hopeful. Together, they would create a life free from lies and betrayal, a life built on trust, love, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.